Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we've got a lot of news to attend to. We're going to start off the program, as usual, by checking in with our mind map and making sure that we can get our bearings straight, because there is a lot of activity out there today. Big story that hit the air this morning was that apparently Donald Trump and his documents involved some sort of terrifying nuclear correspondence or nuclear data or something like this. The Washington Post came out and they actually had an exclusive on this puppy. And they said that there were actual details about nuclear capabilities that came out of a foreign nation, for a foreign nation. Don't know if it's an ally or not, if it's an enemy or not. Don't know if it's like a pamphlet about North Korea, so who knows what it is. But it leaked, and we're going to go through that article. There's also a ton of reaction that is spreading around out there. Karine Jean-Pierre got asked about this by somebody in the media. You see the gentleman still masked up, and he's, sticking really hard with that one. But he asked a good question. He said, the Washington Post is hysterical about this. I'm hysterical about this. Karine, are you also hysterical about this? So we'll go through that. Anderson Cooper, we've got a clip from him. We don't talk too much about Cooper here on the program. And we've got Rubio, who's also saying, these leaks that are going over to the Washington Post and elsewhere are very problematic. We're supposed to have an impartial justice system, and that's not happening here. And so he's got something to say about it. And then we're going to take a look at Hillary Clinton. Oh, gosh, I know. And you're saying to yourself, Rob, are you serious right now? You better believe it, baby. We're going to get into it. We had Kamala yesterday. And so you're saying 2 for 2 back-to-back days. Yes, it's true. We are going to listen to Hillary Clinton today. She was on The View reacting to this new nuclear holocaust news that apparently Trump was going to, cause. She was on The View saying she is just terrified about what this means for national security and the implications around the world. So we'll take a look at that. And we will, of course, take a look at her tweets, because Hillary, she posted this thing. It was very interesting. She said, I can't believe we still have to talk about this, in her own thread, So like she posted something to talk about something that she doesn't want to have to talk about. So we're going to read through her thread. And we're also going to take a look at 2 clips from James Comey. You remember him? Because Hillary says it didn't happen the way that he said it happened. And so we'll just check back in and we'll sort of refresh our recollection on that. On the Trump front, we've got Bill Barr. He is hitting the airwaves hard. I don't know if he's got books to sell or what he's trying to do here. But he is saying that there is a likelihood of an indictment coming. And I think he's right about that. I've said that here, and I know that sort of agitates a lot of people. Like, they're like, Rob, think positively out there. He's not going to get indicted. And I think that it's probably a foregone conclusion. Bill Barr says probably the same thing. And Christina Bobb, Trump's lawyer, is also talking about these property lists and kind of the injustice taking place around those. And of course, we like to check in with the leader of the Republican Party in the Senate, right? We've got different leaders of the Republican Party, but in the Senate, Mitch McConnell is supposed to be the #1 Republican, and we've listened to him like 4 or 5 times at this point say, I've got no comment on the case. And so he was out there again today. We're going to check in with the Turtle Mitch, Cocaine Mitch, and see if he's got an opinion on one of the biggest issues in the modern era: the weaponization of the political branches or the political entities in this country, of the law enforcement agencies. So we've got just a whopper of a first segment here, as you can see. And then we've got this very interesting thing that happened today. Now, this clip, this GIF is from a prior show. This is when Jill Biden dropped off Joe Biden worse than an Amazon package. Like she was delivering a DoorDash order and she just like, oh, here it is. Just tossed it on the front porch. But something happened today, a little bit of a scandal in the White House. Now, the Obamas were over there. You probably saw their photos. We'll take a look at those. But Jill called out Joe Biden and said that Joe Biden didn't stand for her. When Jill Biden got announced, the whole office or the whole White House, they're like, oh my gosh, is she a doctor? Does she have a PhD? Oh my gosh. And so they all stood up and they gave a standing ovation. And Joe Biden, according to Jill, didn't stand up. Didn't stand up for her. And she freaking called him out on this in front of everybody. So we'll go through that. It's a lot of fun. And then we have a little bit of a conversation here with Obama. And Obama says, you know, America, the country is way better off now that Joe Biden's in charge. And you're welcome. And so we'll take a look at American unhappiness. CNN had a poll out from a couple months ago. We'll take a look at that. Joe Biden, of course, brought out the whisper, talking about Michelle Obama, whispering into the microphone like he does, like a weirdo. So we'll go through that. And then Karine Jean-Pierre, she is just almost exasperated. Look at this. So I captured this. She's having a conversation with Ducey, and you can just see this, like this deep breath and just the eye blink, right? She's just thinking to herself, I hate my life right now. Peter Ducey is making me feel so miserable. She's like, God, for the love of God, another question, sweet mother. And she looks over. So we'll go into that. Peter Ducey got her for about 2 minutes, and she's just exhausted by the end of it. So we'll take a look at that. And then, of course, there was some pretty big news today that Steve Bannon is getting indicted. I wanted to see if I could squeeze a whole segment out of this topic, but I'm not sure there's really that much there. So this will be pretty short. But there will be a lot more to attend to tomorrow when he actually turns himself in. So we'll sort of lay some foundation. He's already come out with a statement about what the Southern District of New York is doing. And Washington Post broke the story, so we'll take a look at that. And then Bannon, of course, was on with Charlie Kirk, and Charlie Kirk gave him his regards for what he's going through, and so we'll check in on that. So, as you can see, my friends, boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to get to today. And if you want to be a part of the broadcast, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where they are chatting away over there. We've already got John Allen saying, yeah, it's working and the sound is awesome. Well, thanks, John. Very, very cool. Yeah, I made some last-minute sound adjustments before we walked in here, and I think I can figure it all out today. So it should be better than yesterday. Anyways. So over on Locals, John, Savvy Sue, chatting away. And let's see, over on Rumble, who's over there? We've got Vientikis, Jesse Michael, Rody66 over on our Rumble chat. Shout out to our Rumble friends. Over on YouTube, we've also got members over there. Big shout outs to Jenny B, Curtis Bartle, Bear Ashby's in the house. All click that join button right next to that red subscribe button if you haven't clicked either one of those. Ideally, you click both, but you know, if you have to click one, the subscribe is the first one you want to click. You get the member gifts over there that you can use in the chat, and it's a lot of fun. And of course, I am a criminal defense lawyer at the R&R Law Group. We are a criminal defense exclusive law firm located in Scottsdale, Arizona, serving all of Arizona. So if you happen to know anybody who's visiting the Grand Canyon or here for a bachelorette party or something like that, and they get into a little bit of trouble, that's what we do. Every day, we have an entire team of people who are dedicated, waking up every day, dedicated to the presumption of innocence, preserving the burden of proof, making sure the government doesn't throw that back on the innocent. And we help good people. We appreciate your referrals. They really do keep us busy. 480-787-0394 is the phone number. Online, rrlawaz.com. Free case evaluations. We'll give you a copy of my book. We'll do everything we can to help you. And if it makes sense to work together, we can do that too. So thank you for your referrals. They do keep us busy. All right. And so now, my friends, let's get into the actual news of the day. The Washington Post revealing that Donald Trump and his documents apparently contained some very terrifying nuclear materials. Hillary Clinton is petrified about it. And so we're going to hear from her. She's on The View ranting and raving about this. She is trying to rewrite history with her emails. She created this new thread. She's saying, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want to talk about it anymore. And understandably so, because we have some of those clips from Comey, who said that you did something very illegal, Hillary, but it wasn't quite illegal enough for us, and so we're not going to charge you with crimes. So Hillary is upset about it, but we have to understand what she's so upset about before we get into that clip. And of course, this is the story. It is an exclusive from the Washington Post. For some reason, they keep getting leaks out of the DOJ. It's very strange. You know, the DOJ, Merrick Garland comes out and he says in front of all of us, in front of America, that the DOJ speaks through its filings, and I'm not going to answer questions about the investigation, whatever. And then, of course, day after day, drip after drip, leak after leak. The Washington Post seems to have a direct pipeline into the DOJ. Published this late on September 6th, 10:36 p.m. Oh my goodness, it's an exclusive. Devlin and Carol over at the Washington Post are like, we got to publish this, baby. It can't wait till morning. Hit the presses. Material on foreign nations' nuclear capabilities seized at Trump's Mar-a-Lago. All right, material, what are these, like Wikipedia articles or what? Some seized documents were so closely held, only the president, a cabinet level or near cabinet level official, could authorize others to know. Now, as we go through this, right, I want to just communicate or just sort of spotlight exactly how generic some of these descriptions are. Let's take a look. These journalists, so-called, write, a document describing a foreign government's military defenses, including its nuclear capabilities, was found by FBI agents who searched former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence and private club last month, according to people familiar with the matter, underscoring concerns about the classified material. All right, so it is a document, and again, like I don't know what type of document that is, but a document describing this, is it the confidential, top secret document, or is that document separate and apart from the rest of the description? Some of the seized documents, are we talking about separate documents than the nuclear documents, or is this the same batch of documents? You understand? Is this next paragraph a subset of the nuclear materials, or is this a different category that we're talking about? Don't know. Some of the seized documents detail top secret U.S. operations so closely guarded that many senior national security officials are kept in the dark about them. Wow. Only the president, some members of his cabinet, and other officials are authorized to know the details of the special access program, according to people familiar with the search, who spoke on condition of anonymity, right? Because they are either liars or leakers, both of which are not really great, to describe sensitive details of an ongoing investigation. Yeah. Documents about such highly classified operations require special clearances on a need-to-know basis, not just top secret clearance. Some special access programs, now again, right, so I don't know what they're talking about. Like, this is general documents, okay, so like general documents about such highly classified operations. What are they, it feels very general to me. Like you're just reading a Wikipedia article. How do they handle classified documents? Well, they categorize them into these different things, and some documents are so highly classified that they require need-to-know basis authorization. Well, were those what we're talking about here, or is that like general? Because they also say some special access program can have as few as a couple dozen government personnel who are kept under lock and key, all designated with a designated control officer. And they say all of that was there. But such documents were stored at Mar-a-Lago with uncertain security more than 18 months after Trump left the White House. So such documents, seized documents, again, I don't really know what level of classification they're talking about or what specific documents. We've changed categories a couple times. After months of trying, according to government filings, the government discovered more than 300 classified documents, right? So is that separate than the nuclear codes? Or again, this is just a description of the prior classification standards, right? So I guess my point is there's nothing new here. It was in this last batch of government secrets, people familiar with the matter said, that information about a foreign government's nuclear defense readiness was found. The people did not identify the foreign government in question, say where at Mar-a-Lago the document was found, or offer any additional details about one of the Justice Department's most sensitive investigations. So I guess it's just nuclear defense readiness. So is this like a memo that says that the North Koreans are trying to develop nuclear weapons? Because I'm pretty sure that is on actually Wikipedia. You know, it's like, yeah, he's going over there. Hey, Trump, don't forget, they want nukes. All right, I've got that written here. So it's a conversation about Trump's nuclear, North Korea's defense capabilities. Okay, I can see that. All right. So is that, I mean, or is it something way more serious than that? Like, is this the alternative? Does he have an entire encyclopedia of, Iranian missile silos that Israel's targeting soon? And that could cause a big problem if that is leaked out or something. What's there? Christopher Keese, a lawyer for Trump, decried leaks about the case. He said, these things continue from this leaky DOJ, this political entity that is basically existing for the sole purpose of trying to obliterate Trump. Christopher says, these leaks continue with no respect for the process nor any regard for the real truth. This does not serve well the interests of justice. He says, moreover, the damage to public confidence and the integrity of the system simply cannot be underestimated. The responsible course of action here would be for anyone in the government to exercise leadership and control. Not going to happen there, Chris. Don't hold your breath, brother. The court has provided a sensible path forward, which does not include the selective leak of unverifiable and misleading information. There is no reason to deviate from the path if the goal is, as it should be, to find a rational solution to document storage issues which have needlessly spiraled out of control. Spokespeople for the Justice Department and the FBI declined to comment. Yeah, they'd rather just leak it over to the DOJ. I'm sorry, over to the Washington Post. Well, that's weird. Yeah, the spokespeople don't want to comment, but the leakers will send a whole story over there. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, they are conducting their damage assessment, the same type of damage assessment they never did for Hillary. The Washington Post previously reported that agents were looking around for classified documents relating to nuclear weapons. After that story published, Trump said it's a hoax and the whole thing's a hoax. So they give you more backstory here, right? This is their exclusive story. And it's very little in terms of new information, but they're telling you, right, they're wrapping this around. They want that nuclear material headline in there with very little actual meat on the bones. Washington Post continuing to try to capitalize on this hyperbolic narrative that Donald Trump was on the verge of wrecking humanity. And if that's true, if there really were dangerous nuclear information, materials, codes, readiness, manuals, if there was anything that was so concerning that it warranted, I don't know, the rating of a political operative, of somebody who is an opponent in this country, you'd think the White House would be very concerned about this. They'd say, hey, UK, or they'd say, hey, Israel, or they'd say, hey, allied country, we have a serious national security concern here. All right. Your defense readiness was at a resort in Mar-a-Lago. All right. Trump was like reading your nuclear defense manuals, while he was out in the golf course or something. Or alternatively, our enemies now know that we know what they know. And aren't we concerned about that? Are we escalating? Are we on DEFCON 5? Are we on code red 9/11 emergency? Karine, nuclear is what is here. Please tell us, Karine, what's the White House doing about all of this?
That files seized at Mar-a-Lago include material on foreign nations' nuclear capabilities. I know you can't speak specific to that investigation, nor to the findings there. I know where the line is drawn at this White House as it relates to that. But what has this president specifically said, and has he held any calls with some of America's allies or even adversaries on the issue of nuclear secrets that the U.S. may have some access to try to placate their concerns that information is not in safe hands in the United States?
So I can say this, we don't have any calls to foreign governments to read out at this time.
So I guess not that big of a deal. All this defense posturing or forward assault capability or nuclear materials are not that catastrophic if you guys don't even have any concerns about it, it sounds like.
On this particular issue, as you know, and I'll reiterate this, you already kind of alluded, when it comes to this specific issue, as I've said many times, the ODNI is in the middle of assessment and DOJ is in the middle of an ongoing criminal investigation. So I'm not going to comment. But again, I don't have any calls to read out.
Let me ask separate from that then. Obviously, this is not unique to this investigation. There's been discussion that classified information was mishandled by the last administration, even before this investigation that we've been reporting on. So at any point, has the president had conversations with other nations to communicate to them that information, they should view that information as secure? What has he done to try to make that message clear to those allies or adversaries around the world?
Again, we don't have any calls
Has he in the past?
We don't have any calls to any foreign government to read out to you at this time.
From any time over the course of 18 months?
We don't have any calls to read out at this time.
Thank you.
No calls to read out at this time. We're not concerned about it. The masked journalist is obviously very concerned about it. And he's saying, look, the Washington Post just said there should be a meltdown any minute now. It's imminent. Karine, what are you doing in your administration about this? Well, we don't have any calls planned. We haven't communicated anything to our allies. And we really haven't thought all that much about it. But of course, he's obviously very concerned. That gentleman has a lot of risk aversion, apparently. Now, somebody says, Crispy Leg says, why is he wearing a mask? And was he the only one reporter wearing one? So I didn't see the rest of the press room, but I think he probably was. And I don't know, people still wearing masks, they can fall into one of two categories. They can fall into many categories, but sometimes people might have an elderly mother at home or somebody who just suffered through something. And so they're being hyper vigilant and, you can give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. Or if it's a journalist, a media reporter, they're probably just hysterical hyperventilators, hyperbolic lunatics. And that's probably the latter category where he fits into. But this, of course, is Karine Jean-Pierre. They're melting down in the media about this, but is the actual institution doing anything about this? Are they responding in any way to avert nuclear catastrophe? Or is it just not that big of a deal at all? Probably the latter. Now, there are some pretty big issues with the DOJ continuing to leak. The DOJ is supposed to be an entity that abides by justice, right? And they focus on equal protection of the law. And they don't do things that make one party highly disadvantaged by leaking, let's say, evidence to the public. If you or somebody you know or love is charged with a crime and your evidence and your presumption of innocence is being smeared all over the media because your leaky Department of Justice wants it to because they're partisan political hacks, isn't that problematic? Well, here is CNN that is now blaming Trump for the DOJ's leak. Anderson Cooper says maybe Donald Trump shouldn't have had those documents there in the first place. If he wouldn't have had them, then the FBI couldn't have seized them, and then the FBI wouldn't have been responsible for the leaks. Now, here is Cooper. There's this one gentleman here in the tie, and I think he's making the point. Well, let's listen to him tell us.
Anderson, I was going to point out, what Jennifer referred to earlier, what I don't like about this either is the fact that Devlin is getting this information over the transom, right? This information is probably classified in and of itself. Right, these types of documents, the contents of the documents, those are classified in and of themselves, and somebody probably the Department of Justice has improperly thrown this over the transom to Devlin, and that's it, just as improper as well, and should be condemned.
Saying that the DOJ leaking this stuff to Devlin's the journalist over at the Washington Post, is problematic. It's supposed to be a tight investigation with no leaks. But they are leaking things right over to from the DOJ over to the media. And watch these people defend the leaks now.
I also want to bring in...
It's probably illegal.
Sorry, Judge, go ahead.
Well, just as improper, improper, sure, a leak is improper, but the notion that you want to put the leak in the same category as boxes and boxes.
Well, it's illegal. Your Honor, it's illegal. You wouldn't be condoning illegal behavior.
Right.
She's a judge. This guy says, Judge, you wouldn't be condoning illegal behavior, would you, Judge? She says, well, no. But it's not nearly as bad as Donald Trump's boxes and boxes of material. Yeah, it might be illegal, but it's kind of like not all that illegal. Not as illegal as Trump, she says. Now listen to Anderson come in here and try to clean this up.
This is the reason we don't have secret documents in a beach resort, because they get out and people can do things.
This is why we don't have documents at a beach resort. Okay, it's that emotive conjugation. The beach resort was where Donald Trump spent a ton of time when he was the president, so it was good enough for a sitting president. Now it's suddenly a beach resort. But he says this is why documents aren't stored there, because what happens? I guess if you store documents illegally, then the FBI comes and raids you, and then they disclose them, they leak them, right? The FBI... The documents didn't get leaked to the Washington Post, or this information didn't get leaked to the Washington Post because of Donald Trump. Everything was perfectly fine, sitting right there. The Washington Post reporters, Devlin, got this information because the DOJ and the FBI raided his home, and then they leaked it. Not Trump. But you've got Cooper saying, well, if Trump wouldn't have taken the documents in the first place, then maybe the FBI wouldn't have taken them and then broken the law by leaking this information to the Washington Post. So CNN blaming Trump for even the FBI and the DOJ's incompetence and illegalities now, which is a new one. I mean, that's pretty amazing. Maybe they should charge him with crimes for that. Maybe they should impeach him a third time, idiots. All right, so now we've got Marco Rubio, who is running for re-election out in Florida. Rubio is on with Fox and Friends, and he says, you know, these leaks of Trump's evidence to the Washington Post are critically problematic. Here's what he said.
You know, if true, this Washington Post look at, that doesn't seem like the kind of thing you should have in your post-presidential desk drawer.
Well, let's break this down. First of all, again, we really don't know, because let's go back and understand that all of this information is coming from one side and one place, and that is sources with knowledge of the investigation. Well, who are the sources with knowledge of the investigation? The FBI and the Justice Department, and they are leaking to the media.
Like a sieve.
So generally, and when there's an investigation by the FBI or the Justice Department, they're not even acknowledging there is an investigation, much less leaking. These people every single day are strategically leaking information that can't be rebutted, by the way, or in any way analyzed, for a reason.
And Trump can't even see it, right? He can't even see this material. Remember, the only things that he has seen thus far, and we're going to get to this when we get to Christina Bobb, are the inventory lists. They had the very, very generic inventory list that basically had nothing in there, just box A21. And then we got the more detailed list that said box A21 has 1,000 documents that are not problematic, that are non-government, non-classified materials, and then one classified document. And they said, oh, that means we get that box. We get the box to the left, the box to the right, top, bottom, below. We get the whole stinking room. They were taking desk drawers out and capturing his passports and other materials. And so Trump now, right, they're leaking these materials selectively, and Trump can't even respond to it because he doesn't even know what's in it.
And that's politics, to influence the narrative. And so I'm, first of all, very skeptical of that. I also, the whole thing about only cabinet officials could know, that's not the way classification works. Classification is based on both the compartment, the way it's classified, at what level, and then the need-to-know basis. The third thing I would say is that, you know, as a member of the Gang of Eight, which is the 8 officials in Congress with insight to intelligence, we're read into all kinds of things all the time. Never once were we ever approached and told there is this massive brewing counterintelligence threat to the United States, and we want to make you aware of it. And finally, if you read the pleadings and the documents filed by the government themselves, and granted, they are heavily redacted, so not even have we seen what's in the redaction, but what you see in there is very early on, the government sent a letter to Trump's lawyer basically saying, we think you are in possession of X number of boxes. It didn't say immediately return those to us. It said, please store them somewhere where they're safe behind lock and key and the like. So if it was really that sort of an urgent problem, why didn't they immediately demand their return? Why didn't they come to the Gang of Eight or the Intelligence Committee heads and say, look, we've got this major problem on our hands? Instead, what we get is these constant leaks, and the only reason to leak to the media is to influence the narrative, which tells you this is being politicized, which is
exactly why they didn't come to the Intelligence Committee, exactly why they didn't go to the Gang of Eight. They don't want to talk to Congress. They don't want permission for any of this stuff. They want Trump's property raided. They want an investigation into overdue library books because that's how they're going to win the narrative in their minds. We'll see if it works out. Hillary Clinton, of course, is out trying to make herself relevant. She came out with some new documentary series or some sort of book tour. She's running around with, what's her daughter's name? Christina or something like that. And they're running around. And so here you can see Hillary Clinton is trying to rewrite history. Very interesting. You know, she's having to weigh in on this Trump saga. We all know that Hillary Clinton had a little bit of a problem with some of those confidential documents back during her tenure when she was Secretary of State. And so she's now going to be weighing in. And she posted this on September 6, 2022. Hillary says, I can't believe we're still talking about this, in a Twitter post that she's creating. You know, it's like, if you don't want to talk about it, why are you talking about it? It's kind of weird. I can't believe we're still talking about this, but my emails, ... Because that was like a meme. Remember when she was running? My emails, but my emails. Remember all that? And they thought it was really funny, you know. It didn't work out well for him. She says, but my emails. As Trump's problem continues to mount, she says, the right is trying to make this about me again. There's even a, quote, Clinton standard. The fact is that I had 0 emails that were classified. Saying, oh gosh, Hillary. All right. Well, let's just take a look at this. There were these 2 clips that came out from Mr. James Comey. We all remember him. And James Comey said the opposite of this. Now, Hillary said, the fact is I had 0 emails that were classified. And what Hillary does, if you read the rest of her thread, she goes on and sort of eventually says, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And she refers you over to some website called the National Memo. And the National Memo, they go through this story, this saga, and they say that everything that James Comey said is irrelevant because classification issues, right? Hillary's classifying it in time. Some documents are classified at the moment of creation. Some documents are up classified, meaning they're not classified, and then they are classified. Some documents are classified and then declassified. Right? Just like something can be declassified, it can be up classified. And so there's all sorts of complexities around this. But if you read Hillary's justification, she says, oh, no. What James Comey said is not accurate because Trump and everybody else says they're classified differently than Comey did. And she says that my analysis is better than James Comey's. But do you remember what Comey said? We had 2 very interesting clips here. And the first one is from Comey when he was talking about old Hillary's email saga. And he was in particular telling us about some of the findings that the FBI found. 49 seconds, quick refresher of our recollections.
From the group of 30,000 emails
30,000
returned to the State Department in 2014, 110 emails in 52 email chains have been determined by the owning agency to contain classified information at the time they were sent or received.
At the time they were sent or received. Got it.
8 of those chains contained information that was top secret at the time they were sent. 36 of those chains contained secret information at the time.
Wow.
And 8 contained confidential information at the time.
Wow.
That's the lowest level of classification.
Wow. So top to worst.
Separate from those, about 2,000 additional emails were up classified to make them confidential. Those emails had not been classified at the time that they were sent or received.
Oh, okay. So you can see the difference there. Some were not classified at the time that they were sent. Others were up classified. And so Comey gave us that speech, right? He gave us that little, book report from his agency. They go take all the emails and put them into a spreadsheet and label them in columns. And they said, here you go, Mr. FBI director. Here's our report. And he comes out and he says that. But it's interesting. Did they raid Hillary's home to go pick up that server that was at clintonemail.com? Did they go into her closet and pull it out of there? Did they do any of those things to go get those? No. In fact, they didn't. In fact, she deleted a lot more than that as well. And what did the FBI do when they were investigating those crimes or alleged crimes? Not much. In fact, here is the clip of James Comey fibbing around the actual law, changing grossly negligent into a new phrase, extremely careless. Here is Comey, former FBI director.
Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information.
They didn't intend to violate the law. They set up an entire separate server. Who is hooking the computer up, registering the domain name? Who is installing all of the software to connect these things? Somebody had the intention of setting them up.
There is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. For example, 7 email chains concern matters that were classified at the top secret special access program at the time they were sent and received. Those chains involve Secretary Clinton both sending emails about those matters and receiving emails about those same matters.
Wow.
There is evidence to support a conclusion that any reasonable person in Secretary Clinton's position or in the position of those with whom she was corresponding about those matters should have known that an unclassified system was no place for that conversation.
Should have known, didn't know, didn't do it. No raiding of her home, no investigation that was the DOJ rummaging around Bill Clinton's closet, trying on his brassieres, Didn't see that happen. But of course, it did happen in Trump's situation. And so now, of course, here is Hillary Clinton on The View. After all of that saga, Hillary Clinton's going to say how terrified she is about this current situation in Mar-a-Lago.
I mean, I think this should be taken really seriously, and it's not a joking matter.
And it shouldn't be partisan. No.
And it shouldn't be partisan. No. It should concern every American, because
why?
Those documents in the empty folders, as they were marked, suggest
invisible,
that there was really important secret information that is essential to our country's defense and security. And when the report came out yesterday that the documents also included information about, we don't know which, an ally or an adversary's nuclear program, I cannot tell you how terrifying that is. And Alyssa, you know, because you were at the Defense Department.
Terrified that there are empty documents over there at Mar-a-Lago, and she just can't wrap her head around, the consequences of this. Meanwhile, she had an entirely separate email server with tens of thousands of documents that were kept off of the official government books. And we just heard from James Comey explaining to us that many of them were extremely top secret and national security, this, that, or the other. But that wasn't so terrifying. In fact, she says she's sort of tired of talking about it. Don't you love it? Now, we also have Bill Barr. Plain Hooky says, do not bring Clinton back for the love of... Bill Barr is also hitting the airwaves, saying that Donald Trump indictment is probably pretty likely. We heard from him previously saying that the appointment of a special master was not a wise decision, saying that he thinks it should be appealed and that it will be appealed and that it's kind of a stalling tactic. But here's Bill Barr now answering the ultimate question. Fox News reporter saying, sir, do you think that Donald Trump is going to be indicted? Let's listen to Mr. Barr.
Or overruled is the
I hope it's appealed.
You believe it?
Yeah.
Do you have a view on how it ends?
Yeah, I think, as I've said all along, there are two questions. Will the government be able to make out a technical case? Will they have evidence by which that they could indict somebody on, including him? And that's the first question. And I think they're getting very close to that point, frankly. But I think at the end of the day, there's another question is, do you indict a former president? What will that do to the country? What kind of precedent will that set? Will the people really understand that this is not, failing to return a library book?
Yes, it is, Bill. Yes, it is.
This was serious. And so you have to worry about those things. And I hope that those kinds of factors will incline the administration not to indict him, because I don't want to see him indicted as a former president.
Likely to be indicted, but does not want to see him indicted because he doesn't want to see what that puts this country through. And I think he's right about that. I think that they can indict him. I think they probably will indict him, but they should not indict him. It is going to cause a big problem. Let's see how Barr wraps this up.
But I also think they'll be under a lot of pressure to indict him because, one question is, look, if anyone else would have gotten indicted, why not indict him?
Well, that's the point there, Bill. A lot of people didn't get indicted. Hillary Clinton didn't get indicted. Many others have not gotten indicted because we know what it looks like when one political party goes after another political opponent for purely partisan reasons. Doesn't look good. We also have Christina Bobb. Christina Bobb is Trump's defense lawyer, and she's talking a little bit more about these property lists. These property lists are informational to the defense team. They want to know what evidence they've got against them. And as the Washington Post and others continue to leak about the materials that are apparently within the government's purview, then there is more questions about what they've seized so that the defense can actually create a defense. Here is Christina Bobb, Trump's defense lawyer, now communicating about those property lists and the difficulty surrounding representing a defense client when you don't even know what the evidence is.
I don't know that anything about this raid was legal, but they did take attorney-client documents, and we know that because in the receipt of property that they gave us, they actually gave us two separate receipts of property. One of them is a shorter list. I think it only has about 5 or 6 items on it, and then you've got the other one that has 20 or so items on it. And the shorter list, which doesn't explain that it's privileged information, they just happened to tell me that when they gave me the receipt. They said this is privileged information that, we're handling it differently. We'll work out with the lawyers how to handle it. But of course, they write out classified information on the one list. And then when they take something that is questionable and the public won't like, they leave that off of the list and just tell me. So I think it's a lot of gamesmanship. I think what they did is wrong. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional. And I think they have a lot of explaining to do.
They do, and that's a very interesting thing. She's saying that the information, the property list that they're giving her are necessarily vague, but they're giving her more information than is on the property list. So in other words, they are okay talking and communicating with her about what is actually has been seized, what is a part of the evidence, but they're not going to put it on the property and inventory list because they don't want the public to see. They don't want the rest of the world to see what this is really all about. And to me, what that means is this is technical. This is administrative. This is not something that is juicy. They want to put out juicy tidbits like nuclear materials or nuclear capabilities when it's probably a Wikipedia article or a pamphlet about say this when you're meeting with Kim Jong-un. Remember this. Not nuclear codes, but they'll communicate that to Christina Bobb, but they won't communicate that to us. They'll leak the bad news or the scary words because they know that the media will do the rest of it, and they'll just ask people to fill in the blanks. And the public will fill in the blanks with scarier things than reality, which is why they're doing it this way. Meanwhile, we all have to ask ourselves, where are the Republicans on the Trump defense? Are they concerned at all with the weaponization of the DOJ? Does the Republican leader in the House, does the Republican leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, care at all about the DOJ being weaponized to go after political opponents in America? We've checked in multiple times with Mitch. He hasn't had a lot to say. This is time number 3. Here's Mitch McConnell.
Do you think it's appropriate the way that the former president was storing those top secret and classified documents at his private estate at Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah, I don't really have any comments on this whole investigation that's been dominating the news for the last month. I think we're following it like all of you are.
Those are classified documents, Mr. Leader. I mean, that's important.
And he leaves. I have nothing to say about this. Listen, sir, journalist, cut me some slack here, okay? I'm only the Republican Senate leader, all right? So I'm just following this like the rest of you. I really don't know much about anything here. So thanks for your question. And then we've got, he just makes a beeline. Look, he's kind of reminding me of Joe Biden a lot here lately. Kind of mumbles something out and just runs for the door.
You are.
Those are classified documents, Mr. Leader. I mean, that's important.
These are about nuclear
documents. Have any comment on that?
Right out the door. So not even concerned at all. Just like, well, I guess we're just going to sit around here and just let the investigation unfold as it may. And that's Mitch McConnell. Cocaine Mitch, the turtle, not doing much useful recently. And, the Republicans take a look around at the polls and they start wondering why maybe they're not getting the momentum that they should be. And it's probably because of really kind of milquetoast individuals like old McConnell. And so we'll continue to cover the Trump saga, of course. Thank you for subscribing and liking this video wherever it is you're watching it. We've got an entirely separate segment to get to, but it is, of course, about the Biden and the Obama saga. Now, this was a fun one because Jill scolds Joe Biden so hard here today. And it's quite enjoyable. So let's get into it. Dr. Jill Biden, PhD, ultra PhD, scolds Joe Biden for not standing up for her. She came out during the Obama ceremonial unveiling of the 2 photographs. Look at these 2 lovebirds here in the White House. The media and the people in the White House were just very thrilled about this. They said, finally, people who can talk her back. And they came in and they unveiled these 2 photographs. And I think Obama, I think they cropped out the background, or this is maybe a template for a meme or something. I don't know exactly what that's all about. But they've got these 2 photographs, and we'll come back and we'll take a look at them a little bit more closely. But there was a whole ceremony there today, right? There was the Obamas were there, and they got together to look at photos, weird things that we do in American politics to gather a bunch of journalists in a room and I'm going to show you a picture of me. Wow. So anyways, so then Obama said something. Joe Biden whispered into the microphone again. And all of that took place. We're going to go through all of that. But the scolding took place right at the beginning of the ceremony, okay? They all come walking in. They're all seated around. And they all take turns speaking, right? They all get up and they say something. You've got, Dr. Jill Biden, ultra PhD, who's a doctor. She finally takes the podium after Joe or after Obama or whomever, they're out there. And the crowd gives her a standing ovation because she's a Dr. PhD. And as Jill Biden takes the podium to deliver her brilliance all across America, let's listen to what she says about her husband, Joe, the president.
Joe, honestly, everybody stood but Joe.
Whoa. There's Joe. Honestly, everybody stands but Joe. Okay, so let's watch that one more time, and I'm going to get myself out of this clip. And watch the crowd, right? Joe Biden stands back up. Let's watch this one here.
Joe, honestly, everybody stood but Joe.
All right. Now, we've said this before here that I think there might be a little something going on between these two because Jill Biden had previously dropped off Joe Biden, sort of like a bad DoorDash or an Amazon package. He was speaking, standing in the wrong place. She's like, move your butt over here. And she's kind of agitated and irritated that she's got to continually sort of move him all over the place. But she does that. And now she scolds the president. Joe, you didn't stand up. Everybody else stood up for me. But you're just sitting there on your big, fat, lazy butt. But guess what, my friends? We're defending Joe Biden here today. My friends, Joe Biden stood up for her. All right? He actually did stand up. And she still called him out on this whole thing in front of everybody. He did. Watch this angle. He actually did get his butt up and he sat back down and she scolded him anyways. Watch this one.
Biden.
Look, there's Joe. He stood up. There's Jill. He stood up right there. Now watch. Watch. He's going to sit back. He's standing. That's Jill. He's going to sit back down. They say, hi, Mr. President. We love you. Standing up. She can see it. She can see it. He sits down. Now he sat down. Okay, now he's down. The president, now he stands back up. Now he stands back up. And then she calls him out. Watch.
Joe, honestly, everybody stood but Joe.
What? He did stand. He did stand up.
Thank you, Michelle.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Thank you to MRC TV for clipping that. Go follow MRC TV on Twitter. He did stand up. I mean, I feel bad for Joe Biden right there. Honestly, I'm like, well, that sucks. He stood up, he sat down, and he stood right back up again. Joe Biden is innocent. I got to say it. He's not guilty of that. But I think you can see a little bit more out of Jill. I mean, she's hot, right? She's ready to go. She is ready to just fire off on Joe. She's had enough. She's so tired of walking him down the podium and walking him back. She just is not happy with this. And so she just took one right at him. It's not very nice. So, keep an eye on that marriage. See how that goes. Anyway, so the two photographs that came out, of course, this one, Barack Obama, and okay, so, all right, I guess it's a photo. Whatever. I don't know what these things are for. I guess they hang them up in the White House somewhere and they gather everybody together and Like, what's the white back? Don't you want some depth to it or something? Or is this like a cutout? It looks like clip art. Like I could just clip it out and put it on a popsicle stick for a puppet or something. I don't know, but okay. I mean, it's a nice photo. It's a nice suit. It looks good. It looks, nice. Okay. Yeah, it looks like a cutout. All right. And then you've got this one with Michelle, and she looks like, this looks like it came, honest to God, right out of the Epstein mansion. But all right, it's a photo, and they hang them up around the White House, and I guess it's supposed to be a thing, And anyways. So that's what they were doing over there at the White House. Now, while they were speaking, we got a couple of very interesting clips. Obama came out. And, he comes out and he says, gosh, things are just going so great in America. I'm so thrilled that Joe Biden is now the president, sort of. I'm kind of sort of still the president, but Joe Biden's technically the president. But, he says, things are better in America with Joe in charge. Don't you feel that, America?
Maybe most of all, thanks to your faith in our democracy and the American people. The country's better off than when you took office, and we should all be deeply grateful for that. So thank you so much.
Applause from the clapping seals in the room. Things are better. Things are better. Well, CNN had this article over from February 2nd, 2022, not too long ago, telling us that American happiness hits record low. Oh, that sucks. Here, one word can describe how Americans are feeling about the way things are going. That word, bad. Yeah. That's the finding of a new Gallup poll that was out back in February. Any sense of optimism that was apparent after vaccines were developed has abated. Americans are not pleased with what's going on. Gallup has been asking Americans how they're feeling over for the 29 measurements. Just 38% of Americans say they're satisfied. And yeah, we're going to see how that continues to go as, the incompetence continues to show no limits from the White House or the Biden administration. So record lows. Obama saying the country is better off. Doesn't really look like that. And according to most Americans, doesn't really feel like that either. We also have Joe Biden. Joe Biden whispering to Michelle. He does this thing where he gets real close to the mic and he likes to, I think, get personal with you. Here he is making one of these weird statements to Michelle Obama.
Michelle, he knows, we all know, he couldn't have done it without you.
It just feels gross in your eardrum, especially if you've got one of these microphones in there. I'm not going to play any of those whispers anymore. Those whispers are now banned from this channel. All right, and we've got one final clip here. Now, while the White House was busy sort of congratulating themselves with photography portraits that were clip art photos that belong on popsicle sticks, we've got Karine Jean-Pierre gets asked a very substantive questions from the Fox's Peter Doocy. Doocy is referencing this report from an inspector general that is talking about border security and border issues. The idea being, hey, if you've got a porous border and you've got hundreds of thousands of people who are coming over every quarter, then one of the people that might come across might be dangerous to America. If we've got all these dangerous threats and terrorists and, extremism and all this whatever crap they keep telling us about, shouldn't we be concerned if the inspector general says the border is not all that secure? In fact, we might actually have some pretty big threats coming across the border in real time. And what Doocy is asking Karine about, he's saying, Karine, listen, we've got 2 minutes here of Doocy time. And he says, I'm going to ask you about this report. The Inspector General report is saying we might have some pretty catastrophic threats at our border. My question to you as the White House presidency office, do you think that the MAGA Republicans are a higher or lower threat than the threats from the border crossers that the Inspector General has identified? Doocy's going to ask about this in 2 parts. She's going to answer it, and then the first part is about the IG report. The second part is about the MAGA Republicans, and he's going to tie the two together. Let's listen.
Thank you, Karine. As refugees were being evacuated from Afghanistan into the U.S. last year, why weren't they all being thoroughly vetted?
So are you talking about, what are you referring to?
Well, so as the White House was managing the Afghanistan withdrawal last year, we were told no one is coming into the United States of America who has not been through a thorough screening and background check process. But now there's this DHS Inspector General who says CBP admitted or paroled evacuees who were not fully vetted into the United States. That is not good. That is different than what you guys said. So how did this happen?
No, it's not different than what we have said. That very report, it did not take into account the key steps in that rigorous, you heard from us, rigorous and multi-layered screening and vetting process the U.S. government took before at-risk Afghans were permitted to come to the U.S. Again, I would refer you to the DHS comments on this. It did not take into full account of what the other agencies are involved in making sure that this multi-layered process and screening process, it is a multi-agency effort, and it did not. This particular report did not include that.
So saying that the report, their interpretation or the report's interpretation is different than somebody else's interpretation. It's all just sort of legalese or press secretary mumbo jumbo is the better phraseology there. But she's now going to get asked now, right, if those are threats to America, what about the MAGA Republicans? How do they stack up to these other legitimate threats that have been articulated by the IG?
But so in the last week or so, we've heard the president calling elected Republicans a threat to the country. Does he think MAGA Republicans are more of a threat to the country than people DHS says may pose a risk to national security and the safety of local communities?
Again, DHS has disputed this report. And it said it didn't take into account the key steps.
Not answering that question. She's answering the question about the Inspector General versus the DHS. The Inspector General is an independent agency that does their own analysis, and they say, we've found some problems. They're saying the DHS is responding to the IG saying, we disagree with their report. Now, the question is about MAGA Republicans. Is she going to answer that?
That we have taken, as a U.S. government, the rigorous multi-layered screening and vetting process that we take as a government. That was not part of the report. Again, this report is not accurate. I know that our team has spoken to your team about this, and the DHS has provided a comment saying just that. So, again, I refer you to DHS.
I refer you to DHS. So are the MAGA Republicans a threat in the same context as other threats to America? I refer you to DHS. And there's that clip where she just doesn't look so good. All right, she finishes with Ducey and then watch this like sigh, like, and she just looks over. She's like, oh gosh, finally. She just wraps it up right here.
The DHS has provided a comment saying just that. So again, I refer you to DHS.
Yikes. Okay, next question. Yeah, she's had enough of Ducey. Ducey asks some hard questions. Basically the only person in the media who does much of that at all, and she does not like that. Karine Jean-Pierre having to deal with some of the hard questions while the Obamas and the Bidens play photography lesson and unveil some portraits over there at the White House, as Jill Biden needlessly scolds the total innocent Joe Biden, who actually did stand up and got scolded anyways. Can't do anything right over there. So, all right. Well, that's the White House, my friends. And thank you for subscribing. We, of course, are going to continue to cover these clowns indefinitely. And I appreciate your support, your likes on this video before you skip on over to the next one. All right. And we've got one final, just quick segment, real short update because there's not much to it. Steve Bannon indicted. He's also going to be appearing in front of a judge and setting release conditions, but he is speaking about what happened in a new press release. We're going to take a look at that. But first, let's take a look at the backstory over from the Washington Post. Oh gosh, I thought I already logged in here. I'm logged in on the other article. Hold on a second. Let me refresh this. There it is. Here it is. Bannon will face a state indictment in New York, is going to surrender on Thursday. Former Trump strategist is already convicted. We've covered this case at length. Remember when we talked Steve Bannon, we had entire trial coverage. It was a very short trial, just less than 1 week, really. He was convicted on 2 counts. 1 count, contempt of Congress for not showing up and giving testimony. 1 count, contempt of Congress for not providing documents when he was subpoenaed from the January 6th Select Committee. Okay, so he's already been convicted in that case. He has not been sentenced yet. We're waiting for the sentencing to take place. And that is a federal court case, right? That is a federal system matter. He was charged out of the D.C. Circuit Court because the January 6th Select Committee is comprised in D.C. So they have jurisdiction. But there are other jurisdictions around this country, and some of those jurisdictions are state jurisdictions. And we know that when Donald Trump left office, he pardoned Steve Bannon, and Bannon was already under investigation in many different facets by many different individuals, and Trump gave him a pardon. The problem is that pardon only applies to federal level cases for certain issues. And here, this is a separate issue that takes place at a state level, taking place particularly out of New York. Steve Bannon, writes the Post, they got the exclusive on this, is expected to surrender to state prosecutors on Thursday to face a new criminal indictment, people familiar with the matter said. This comes weeks after he was convicted of contempt of Congress, 2 years after he received the pardon from Trump. The precise details of the case could not be confirmed on Tuesday, but people familiar with the situation speaking on condition of anonymity again to discuss a sealed indictment suggest the prosecution will likely mirror aspects of the federal case in which Bannon was pardoned. Okay, so the DOJ leaks at the federal level. You've also got leaks at the state level from the prosecutor's office. In that indictment that took place at the federal level, that basically the state is just going to pick up and charge under state law, they say prosecutors allege that Bannon and several others defrauded contributors to a private $25 million fundraising effort called Build the Wall, taking funds that donors were told would support construction of a barrier along the U.S.-Mexico border. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which handles state-level prosecutions, has been evaluating Bannon's alleged involvement of the scheme for quite some time. Bannon, a former strategist for Trump, they're saying that authorities of somebody else, he pled not guilty to the charges. They say authorities pulled him off a yacht and brought him to court. He was accused of pocketing $1 million in the scheme. Months later, in the last hours of the presidency, Trump included Bannon on the pardons. 2 other people involved. One is named Brian. He's a disabled veteran, pled guilty. The other, Timothy Shea, ended in a mistrial in June when the jury could not reach a unanimous verdict. That's why you don't plead guilty. 2 other men, one pled guilty, the other had a mistrial. So I don't know what the status is, but man, that will be interesting to see if they're charged, if they retry that one. The new state indictment, the one that Bannon is going to be facing, comes less than 2 months after Bannon was convicted in Congress of contempt of Congress. The state case will be handled by, we've talked a lot about him, Alvin Bragg. Spokesman from his office declined to comment. But Bannon is expected to turn himself in on Thursday. And this is not unusual. We talked about this morning on our morning walk and talks for members and for locals. But it is a common thing. This happens regularly. In fact, police and prosecutors will be investigating somebody. The defense team for that person will know that that person's probably being investigated because of conversations back and forth. Prosecutors will reach out. Hey, here's what's going on. You're going to be indicted. What do you want to do about this? We can come pick you up, or you can come and show up and we can just sort of do this amicably. They gave Bannon the benefit of the doubt there, right? And that's actually a good thing. We sort of like to see that happen. The opposite, I don't like to see Bannon charged here. I think this is entirely political. But my point is, generally speaking, regular criminal procedure, you give people the benefit of the doubt and you try to resolve these things amicably. In most of these cases, that has not happened. Peter Navarro is an example. Ronnie Jackson, I can't remember the guy's name who got his cell phone seized. FBI agents showed up at the airport tarmac. Trump FBI raid. Roger Stone raid. Right? The raid is not the default. What we see here is the default. It's supposed to go this way, where they say, Bannon, this is what we're doing. Why don't you just come and drop yourself off and we can walk through this together? When reached for a comment, Bannon gave one. The state effort to investigate Bannon began under Cyrus Vance, who got thrown out of office or left. In addition to Bannon's investigation, Bragg also inherited Letitia James and some of her other cases, and so on. So that is just yet another criminal prosecution for Steve Bannon. Bannon issued a statement responding to all of this. He said, just days after being swatted 3 different times by deranged thugs from New York City, inspired by the Biden administration to assassinate me by the police, the Soros-backed DA has now decided to pursue phony charges against me 60 days before the midterm election because War Room is a major source of the MAGA grassroots movement. Bannon says the SDNY, the Southern District of New York, they did the same exact thing in August 2020 to try to take me out of the election. It didn't work then. It's not going to work now. Bannon says this is nothing more than a partisan political weaponization of the criminal justice system. Bannon says, I am proud to be a leading voice on protecting our borders and building a wall to keep our country safe from drugs and violent criminals. The War Room show will be more vital, more intense, more urgent, and bigger this time. They are coming after us all, not only President Trump and myself. I am never going to stop fighting. In fact, I have not yet begun to fight. They will have to kill me first. Signed by Steve Bannon. And of course, he'll show up to court tomorrow, show up downtown, wherever he's indicted in Southern District of New York, see a judge, get booked, hopefully have some release conditions already set. Sounds like he's been through this before already. Bannon was on with Charlie Kirk on the War Room, invited him on, and Kirk offered Bannon some nice words of support, saying, I can't believe what they're doing to you. Bannon gives a nod, gives a little smirk, and he'll be in court tomorrow.
Dollars of these deadbeat spending back on the working class people's shoulders. Can he do that?
No, he can't. And Steve, before we go any further, I meant to say this in the first part, and I don't want to, go too deep into this, but we stand with you, Steve. It's ridiculous what the state of New York is doing to you. It's awful and it's grotesque. No, seriously, the targeting, and we're going to talk about it in our program next hour. So I just want to make sure I said that. No, Joe Biden does Joe Biden does not have the power.
Thank you, brother, says Steve Bannon. And of course, it's always stressful when you're dealing with government prosecutors, when you're dealing with lunatic judges. This is New York, and, who knows what they're going to do to him. So stressful day for Steve, and certainly could use your thoughts and prayers if those are things that you are willing to send his way, because it's another political prosecution in America taking place because they don't like the politics, not because Steve Bannon did anything ultra criminal or anything ultra MAGA. Other than being ultra MAGA, that's his crime. So we'll continue to cover that, Steve Bannon and other political prosecutions all across this country. Thank you for subscribing and joining us as we do. And that, my friends, is it for the segments. We covered a lot of ground today. We had some Trump news. We had some Joe Biden, Obama photography news. And of course, Steve Bannon indicted or will be indicted as we speak. And we'll cover that more when we learn more. But now it's time to hear from you and see what you have to say about it. And we'll start over on YouTube today. We've got Actual Izzy. He says, hey, Rob, what is your thoughts on term limits for Congress? Well, I mean, I guess I don't have a hard opinion on it. I mean, I'm in favor of more turnover in Congress. That would require some sort of, constitutional amendment, I think, wouldn't it, in order to do that? So it would be a heavy lift if we wanted to go that route. But certainly, I think that when you have Congress people in Congress for 40 years, I think that's a huge problem. Another congressional issue that I've brought up several times here has been the dilution of representation in this country. I think that is also a huge problem. I think that two issues, if you wanted to go back to the original interpretation of the Constitution, which might be more appropriate than term limits, I think those would require, they all could be appropriate. The point is, two issues. One, return the Senate votes back to the state legislatures instead of the people. That would cause a lot of ruffle a lot of feathers, but it was designed that way for a reason. And also greater representation in the House of Representatives. So right now we have, 435 representatives? That's not in the they kept that. That was never in there. There should be many more representatives, because if you cap it at 435, then you essentially have two Senates, don't you? You've got a big Senate and a small Senate, and that's not what we want. We want a House of Representatives. We want representation, not just sort of like the varsity loser bureaucrats and junior varsity. We don't want that at all. Thanks, Actual Izzy. Crispy Leg Transport says, why is he wearing a mask? And was he the only reporter wearing one? Again, I don't know, right? He's probably, I don't know. Who knows? He's going through a thing, or maybe he's just hysterical. Good to see you, Crispy. Steph D says, when you play videos, there's a high-pitched noise. I caught that today on the show. I did catch that, Steph. I'm going to work that out. I'm constantly replacing cords and moving cords around. Part of the issue that I'm having is that I've got all this stuff sitting on the desk. And when all the technology is close by, you sort of get these weird interferences that you sort of can't really hear until you're kind of using it for a long period of time. And I have started to, I just heard that today. So I will address it. But thank you for bringing that to my attention. And did you notice it wasn't on every video? It was only on some videos. So it was kind of weird. Get Into It says, could you name at least 2 people Trump should recommend to act as special master? Yes. Robert Barnes and Nick Rekieta. Both those guys should go do it. That would be my recommendation. I think it'd be worthwhile to do it. No, but in all seriousness, there are recommendations, right? You have to actually go through and file and submit recommendations. But there are, actually, there was somebody who made recommendations. So I don't have any recommendations. Okay, I don't have like a list, like a Rolodex of special masters. So, special masters for national security cases involving the president and DOJ. I know like 5 guys who are great at that. Let me get you their names. Hold on. I don't have anybody like that off the top of my head. I certainly don't. But there were recommendations. I was going to try to pull it up, but if you look at the actual court docket, as soon as Trump filed the request for special master, other people are filing motions saying, I recommend these 3 people or those 4 people or whatever. So there's going to be a whole slew of people crashing in there. And the real question will be, how do we vet this individual and distinguish between what is a good person or a good candidate and what is not. Crispy Legs also says, Bill is watching your stream. He used the library book analogy. Did you see that? That analogy is sort of spreading through the zeitgeist. I don't know. It's a good analogy. Alan Mastardi, not Mustardi, is here. Alan Mastardi. Oh, that's going to be a tough one for me to remember. Or Mastardi. 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 Here it is. Bill Barr is sending mixed messages. It's not passing my smell test. What does he have to gain either way? By the way, when is Republicans going to grow a spine and start actually doing something? I don't know. Mastardi, I don't know. I've been waiting for that a large part of my life, to be honest about it. But what does Bill Barr have to gain? I don't know. Bill Barr's he's an enigma. I really don't know. Sometimes he comes out and he seems like he's got an agenda, and other times he doesn't. He seems like he's just kind of riffing out there. So I don't know what his deal is. But yeah, it is weird. It's a weird deal. I think that a lot of people's take is sort of saying that he's kind of a status quo type of guy, wants the status quo, likes the status quo. Maddie Adams says Barr is selling a book. Yeah, it might just be that, right? It might just be exposure. He just wants to sit there and riff about the law because he's selling books, and he told his publisher he'd go do that. Like it could be as simple as that. Maybe no nefarious actors there or whatever. But Bear Ashby says, Rob, here in Lugoff, South Carolina, I ran into MS-13 gang members and sent the pictures to my governor, and he doesn't care that America is in danger. Yeah, Bear, yeah, they don't care. I mean, at all. You think your politicians care about you? No. That's cute. That's funny, but it's not a reality. Yeah, they care about your grandmother getting sick with COVID. I'm sure they really care. Yeah. Yeah, how many illegal what are they calling them now? Can we call them illegal immigrants? Is that allowed on YouTube? I don't know, maybe. But you can. How many? Did you see they're like hundreds are dying, and we talked about this a long time ago that this was going to be the reality. They don't care about any of that. Good to see you, Bear. Yakball says Valley Girl time. Like, oh my God, Trump so had the Death Star plans in his hotel. I mean, that's so criminal and so bad. Oh, man, I feel dirty kind of reading it that way. Valley Girl time. Not going to go any further than that. Oh, that's funny from Yakball. Oh, my God, Trump had the Death Star plans in his hotel. Yeah, in his hotel in his Mar-a-Lago Beach Club. Good to see you, Yakball. All right, my friends, let's go over to locals. We're doing a refresh over here. And Paul Minot started us off. He said, Rob, missing this week's live show, but I just want to leave this before I head out. It's MAGA. Ultra MAGA Rob. I'm down for that. I like that look, actually. I think I think I might go for that. The old, when my hair grays out a little bit, it'll be like, your argument is invalid. My hair is a bird, right? Isn't there a meme like that? Thank you, Paul Mino. Hope you're having a great time wherever it is you are, my friend. Paul also says, also apologies for the GIF arguments. Here, that's Paul Mino. And the rest of the GIF users are part of the Third Reich, apparently. All right, well, the lines have been drawn, Paul. I mean, I guess you've made your argument. Pretty stern argument there. All right, we're hitting a refresh, and let's see what we've got over here on the next page. All right, we've got here. Vientica says, people are asking if you lost your spotlight. Rob lost his copyrights to Big Beautiful Spotlight. Time to take it back. No, it's funny that you ask about that, V, because I was just talking about this with Speech Unleashed. For those of you who are new to the program, when the show started, I had an intro that I used to do, this big long intro, Robert Gouveia, watching the watchers, accountability, transparency, and justice, shining a big, beautiful spotlight and all of that stuff. And it was like a minute, like it was a big, long intro. And it was fun. I liked doing it. And I got like all animated at the end. Wow, spotlight and all that stuff. And I stopped doing it. And so Speech Unleashed over on Locals, he asked about that. Why did you stop doing that? That was kind of a fun thing. And the answer that I posted over on Locals was really, it's just kind of an analytics thing. It's really just an analytics thing. On YouTube, people don't like those big, long intros. When they click something, they want to get right to it. And what I was finding is if I looked at the analytics, people would either leave or they would fast forward over it. So I just decided to cut it out. But Speech said, well, you should work it back in. It doesn't have to be like an intro, just work it back in there. And I thought, yeah, no, that's a good idea. That is a good idea. And so maybe I'll squeeze it in there sometime. But now that I told you that I'm going to squeeze it in now it's going to be weird when I do it. It's going to be like, oh, he's squeezing the spotlight thing in now. It's not, now that I talked about it, now it's like going to be weird. But we'll squeeze it in. I love the spotlight. That's what we do here. Shine big, beautiful spotlights, baby. All right, we've got Cheryl, Texas ditch doctor, says here, nothing to contribute, but we'll miss the live, a little patriotism for the soul. The Star Spangled Banner, as you've never heard it. So go listen to that one over on Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl. Kenny Cole says, y'all, you got to see my son Hunter. It's too funny. Yeah, I think, is that releasing today, soon? Words Mean Thing says, hey, watchers. Miss Lucky and Sergeant Bob say all career needs is the Letitia Grimace. Remember Letitia Tissy Tish James? Speaking of Speech Unleashed, he's here, says, nice to know that the DOJ wants to charge Trump for mishandling the classified documents when they can't even properly handle them. Yeah, it's a good point, right? If they're leaking all over the place. Well, Anderson Cooper blamed Trump. If he wouldn't have had them there in the first place, then the FBI wouldn't have negligently handled them. Yeah. Kenny says, if there's a kernel of truth to the WAPO exclusive, then the document is probably prep materials for Trump's visit with North Korean leader. And that's another good point, Kenny. My question, of course, is, were there any materials in these classified documents that the public already knew, that we were already aware of? Like, it's technically classified because it came from a government source. Like, yes, they've got a CIA operative who said that, yes, the North Koreans do have nukes located in this area. But we also know, just by looking on Wikipedia, that there's also issues in this area because, it's sort of it's OSINT, the open source intelligence, already has it. So is it really that consequential? Who knows? So now Thunder 7 says, a week can't go by without the DOJ charging Trump or one of his insiders or supporters with something. The swamp is literally panicking big time as MAGA gets stronger and more popular that they're grabbing at straws. I bet the nuclear secrets are big nothing burgers, as Trump would never be that careless. Unlike Clinton, who allowed her private servers to be hacked by foreign countries. She sold our military secrets too, and people don't believe a word the DOJ have to say anymore. They know that they are a weaponized political tool of the FBI and the DOJ of Biden. Rye T says, hello, Rob and crew from Thursday. I've been having a difficult time recently, not been able to move in, but I absolutely love to be here when I can make it. I don't know what it is. There's just a sense of familiarity and home when I can tune in live and enjoy the chat and everybody's contributions. Thank you for helping me, everyone. Well, we're grateful to have you here, IT. And I agree with you. It does feel like a home. It does feel like familiarity. We are getting to know each other. It's a community, baby. Says, anyway, enough of that. I watched an interesting video today that my brother showed me called Yuri Bezmenov explaining 4 stages to bringing down a country. I believe I've watched this. It's 11 minutes long on YouTube, extremely fascinating. I gathered it's an ex-Soviet KGB agent talking about how to manipulate a country's population to weaken it and effectively take them over. A lot of what is said is creepily accurate and relevant to today's society, such as Marxists being in positions of power. And I urge you and everybody watching to spend the 11 minutes checking it out after the stream. Maybe you could do a summary review of it, Rob. Hope you're well. Cheers. Cheers to you, RIT. Great comment. And you know what? I do believe I've actually seen that. I've actually watched it. I probably will not, play the full thing, but I will encourage people to go watch it. And actually, I think I've got the link. Why is this? Okay, well, I'm not sure if this is the link. But the point is, and I can't change that right now. But the point is, yes, it is a very interesting clip. If you want to look it up, this is the title of it. Yuri Bezmenov explaining the 4 stages to bring down a country. And he talks about, a lot of it's cultural. You break down culture. You break down family and definitions and labels and all of the things that people sort of used to, incorporate into their lives. You break all of those down, and a country is a lot more controllable if you do those things. So very good comment, Righty. And I hope you're doing okay. Not having a difficult time. I hope you're doing okay. I know that sometimes things, times can be tough out there, but community is a good place to be. We're grateful to have you. Former LEO says, appearance of fairness, appearance of fairness, appearance of fairness. While these sensitive documents were under the control and the protection of the former POTUS, the documents were safe and the contents were not leaked to the press. To sum it up, the documents were safer under the control of former POTUS than under Garfield, the DOJ, and FBI. Yeah, nothing got leaked when they were there at Mar-a-Lago. Now they're being leaked. How about serving Garfield with a cease and desist order to stop the leaks and the slanted release of information? Well, not going to be able to do that. Not going to serve him with anything. And, you're going to serve the DOJ with the cease and desist. They're the DOJ. They're the government. They do whatever they want. That's why we have such big problems with them, because they are largely unaccountable, as we are now learning in real time. All right, we've got another page here. Robute says, remember the Washington Post phase is democracy in darkness, their phrase? That is wrong. It's actually democracy dies in the Washington Post. Rai T says, whether Trump broke the law or not, whether he kept the documents he should have or not, I think we can all agree that he'll never be treated fairly if the government, the media, or a huge swath of the population have their say. The man could cure cancer and they'd still attack him for not doing it 20 years ago or for not curing diabetes at the same time. Yeah, it really is true. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are so disconnected with their hate for Trump. It's kind of nuts. Sergeant Bob says, as if Clinton is believable, like we're going to take her word for it. This one came in from Thunder 7. The report, Washington Post is about to lose money because subscribers are fleeing. Trump says, oh, gee, isn't this just too bad? Oh, no. From Thunder 7. Former LEO says, now I have a vision in my brain of a tall stack of Hillary's. Oh, gosh. We have this one from Lynette. Says, Rob, I've always thought we needed to overturn Times versus Sullivan and the process define what press means. There must be accountability for the media bureaucracy, who seems to be lobbying hard for Nuremberg 2.0, but this time not allowing the swamp to slither to Argentina. Yeah, well, Lynette, I think part of the issue with the free speech conversation is that the media has been doing the government's dirty bidding as state agents. The government has been outsourcing their dirty laundry to the media, right? So if you define it, what the press is, look, I am for almost unequivocal, universal, absolute free speech, about as close as you can get to that. And what the government has done has allowed the private sector to eviscerate it even what the First Amendment says, right? And, you know, Miss Lucky said, and it's really disgusting. So I guess the point would be you'd have to extend something that covers all of that, right? Free speech has to go beyond just the government as a state actor. It's got to go beyond that into, you know, a baseline of society, I guess, if you want government to mandate that. Or, you know, there's alternatives popping up in crypto and elsewhere. But I think it is the issue of our time is free speech. We have another one coming in here from NY Renal MD says, notice how after Trump seems to have a victory, stuff happens. Magistrate releases the affidavit. A judge approves a special master. Leaks failed in the past, and it appears this one will as well. The question is, what kind of operation is the DOJ running with these leaks? The classified documents were safer when they were in Trump's closet. Now than they are being investigated and being leaked to the press. The staged photo and now this are extreme national security leaks, the Garland DOJ creating self-fulfilling prophecy. How can they go to the judge with clean hands? We need not only a special master, we need the DOJ Inspector General to investigate all of this outside of Garland's hands. Yeah. Well, the special master, a third party, it's a good comment, NY Renal. I'm not sure that we're going to see any of it other than the special master, but we'll see. Robute says, remember that Bill Barr, father hired Epstein, then Bill Barr. Okay, so there's a lot of corrupt scandals about Barr. Bill Barr's corrupt, should be treated with caution, is what Robute says. Also says, emotional old cat lady says, Rob, tell Bill Barr he's not allowed to steal your analogy of the library books. I'm sure your show is being watched outside our community. You were the first one to compare this to library books long ago. I don't know about that. I think you're giving me a lot of credit for that one. I'm not sure. Bill Barr said, Donald Barr is okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the library book thing, it's ridiculous. It is library. Ed J says it's going to Trump's library at some point. Ed J says, is it possible that the warrant and the misconduct of the raid could be found to violate the Fourth Amendment rights of Trump? Yes. Yes, definitely. Yeah. So anytime, that you've got, so let's say Trump does get indicted. And they said, okay, well, we know what the charges are now. We know what the documents were. We know what all the allegations are. We know they said nuclear codes, and it turns out it was a personal record. It wasn't a presidential record. We knew they said top secret, classified, SCI, whatever. Turns out it wasn't any of those things. It was all of these other things. And so you go back through and you say that affidavit that they used to get that search warrant is fraudulent. If they didn't, it was whatever you can learn from building your defense, right? The problem is you can't build a defense until you know what is out there, and we don't know what's out there. So it's like a very frustrating position to be in. It's almost like this is a very frustrating situation in general in the law when somebody thinks they might be in trouble and they're kind of living under the possibility of criminal charges. But yeah, once you do get charged, you file a motion to suppress or a motion to dismiss based on Fourth Amendment constitutional violation, saying the search was lacking, the warrant was lacking particularity, or it falls outside of the purview of the statute, right? They couldn't possibly get a conviction on this basis if this is really what they were looking for, and you make those arguments. Can what was found in the illegal search still be used as evidence? Another great question, and this is called fruit of the poisonous tree. So the answer is no, that if the search was illegal, anything they found after the search was illegal. And we try to do this all the time in DUI cases. If you say that the search, if the blood draw was invalid, if they didn't have a basis for pulling you over in the first place, then the blood they took out of your body is fruit of the poisonous tree. They can't use that against you if they had no basis for stopping you. So the blood results don't come in as evidence. And you win your DUI case. And so the same thing can happen here, right? Trump says you didn't have a basis for the search warrant. Warrant's illegal, invalid, a violation of privacy rights. Therefore, it is you can charge him, but you can't use any of the boxes that you took. Also, the timing of this recent leak is suspicious given the investigation from the document perspective per the judge saying it's supposed to stop. It's a good point, right? They shouldn't be rummaging through anything else. So is this old data? Excellent point. My goodness, Ed. Great point on that one. Why didn't I think of that? Yeah, right. So this must be old news, right? Because they were supposed to stop looking at the evidence. So what some DOJ partisan hack told the reporters from the Washington Post must be old. This can't be a new revelation, right? Because on Monday, we know that the judge said, stop rummaging through Melania's undergarments. Very good, astute observation here. Ed, Jay, this is sort of like a law school hypothetical. You'd actually get a question like that. Oh, tell me about this and tell me about this. What if they keep leaking? Does the judge have any remedy for that? Yeah, I mean, the judge could sanction the DOJ if they could prove that these leaks were sort of connected back to the government somehow. But the government leaks all the time. So, yeah, the judge could officially, inquire about this and say, hey, Trump files something. Judge, they're leaking evidence about the case that they're not even telling us about. Tell them to stop. Order, come into my office, come into my courtroom. What's going on? Where's this evidence leaking out to? Stop doing that. Admonish them, whatever. Great question. Word's main thing says, of course, Joe didn't stand up for his wife. She wasn't right next to him prompting him. I know. Well, so he did stand up, but I guess he didn't stand up long enough. He sat back down, and then she wasn't there to stop him from sitting back down. Lynette says, I've always thought Bill Barr was kind of trying to redeem himself for most of his tenure. It's hard to listen to hearings and interviews, especially with Wolf Blitzer talking about mail-in voting. He says, he told the truth, and he did so in an appropriately indignant manner. After that, of course, he went silent, and he emerged flagrantly lying about the election like the rest of the Democrats and the rhinos. Was he just that great of a CIA actor? Or was he being threatened and blackmailed and bribed like many judges seem to be? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about Bill Barr. Who knows what's going on with him? Good to see you, Lynette. Former says, when the new Senate is confirmed, they could sit Mitch down and get a younger and more aggressive leader. That pig that they're putting lipstick on, it's Mitch. It wasn't Sarah. Three Girlies is here. Shout out to the youngest girlie. Says, Jill thought Joe needed some more exercise. Stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. He sprung right back up, to be fair to him. Robute says, please archive the news articles on archive.org and read from the archive so you can prevent the propaganda agencies from gaslighting us by stealth editing. Oh, that's interesting. If I see anything like that, yeah, I definitely pull the archives. I do go back if I see conflicts there. Emotional old cat lady says, poll published today. All those poor peasants hurting the most. Note people are withdrawing $616 a month to meet expenses, or I'm betting using their credit cards. New post, Washington, D.C. says inflation remains the chief concern of Americans as we transition into autumn. In fact, according to Gallup, the problem has gotten worse, especially for low and middle income Americans. You've got this. In response, Americans are cutting back. Price increases cause financial hardship for, let's see if we can zoom in on this one. Lower income, less than $48,000 annual income. Price increase causing financial hardship. August 2022, 74% financial hardship. Middle income, yeah, I mean, that's just awful. Okay, so upper income, 90K and up, 40% experiencing hardship. But if you're 90 and below, 63%, and if you're under 48, 74% hardship. And we talked about this on our morning walk and talk. I think this was yesterday. They're talking about in Europe, electricity prices going up 200%. So, your house or business doubles or triples in some places. What do you do about that? It's nuts, right? That's a big bill for a lot of people. And electricity, as we talked about this morning, is everything. You can lock people down in their homes. You can say your kids aren't going to school, but they sit at home and they watch Netflix, right? They lock down and okay, we zoom it up for our kids and for our businesses, but not if there's not any electricity. And so how do you live without electricity? Well, we're going to find out pretty soon. Jason on Blast says, thanks for stating the fact that these are political prosecutions, even on YouTube. It's true, and we must state the facts and not hide from them. Well, you're right about it, Jason. I don't think that these are with merit at all. We've got a couple others here. Let's see what is in from Thunder 7. Thunder 7 writes, Rob, all the people Biden's DOJ have targeted are older men, many in their 70s. No matter how healthy they are, it's extremely stressful to be indicted, rated, and worse, like Navarro, who was put in leg irons. Look, I have represented hundreds, if not thousands of people facing criminal charges. My office, thousands of people. It is extremely stressful, okay? I have seen the toughest people in the world crumble. It is not a fun situation, okay? It's your literal freedom. It's horrific. And it doesn't matter who you are. It's bad enough that they targeted them for political reasons, but it must take a toll on them. I'm surprised Trump hasn't had a heart attack with the nonstop attacks. As I write this, you asked to send them prayers if inclined. Yes, I definitely will, and I pray for Trump all the time. Yeah, wait until the Democrats find out Trump is colluding with God. Gosh. It's true, Thunder 7. It's true. 3 Girlie says, youngest girlie says hi. She wanted a shout out. Good. She got it. Shout out. ×2 for the youngest girlie. Vientika says, if you got a lot of cable, you might need some cables with better shielding. If you have long data cables, put the slack in the figure 8s. It will cancel out the self-induced noise. Put the slack in figure 8s. Oh, Vientikis, man, how did you... Do you know Vientikis wrote a whole book on electrical mechanics and like nuclear physics and stuff like that? He sent me the book. It's crazy. All right, so that's exactly what this is. I got to move some crap around, and I got to move the cords around. And sometimes I can hear it, and it gets exacerbated with certain clips, and sometimes it doesn't with other clips. And so, you know, I just have to sort of continue to work it out. But we've got Zach Nichols. Thank you, V, for that astute wisdom. Zach Nichols says, going back to Jill scolding Sleepy Joe. First, check out Obama not even looking at Joe, just a pat on the arm. Second, I'm 99% sure Obama sat down or nearly sat all the way down. Joe followed. As the camera angle changed, you notice Obama pop up, followed by Sleepy Joe. FYI, Trumpy Bear is 22 inches. Oh, okay, thank you, Zach Nichols, for that one. Yeah, I think, look, Joe Biden is innocent on this one. He stood up. Jill Biden is cranky. She was not happy with that at all. The Veil says, hey, Rob, so the mask issue is probably a notification to the reporter's sponsors for a boost in his salary. Hillary's classified emails must have held all the documentation between the buyer of the uranium-6 and her foundation, and who the buyer of the uranium-6 was and why it wasn't necessary for her to not get the okay from Congress. That's why she took the bleach and hammer to her hard drives. Finally, Jill Biden wanted to be president and is the reason behind Biden's dementia, typically aggressive, passive behavior, showing the world who was in charge. Yeah, that's a good point. It's almost like the Will Smith slap, isn't it? Will Smith walked up and slapped Chris Rock because he's like, I'm in charge. I'm alpha. You don't disrespect me in front of other people. And so Jill Biden says the same thing. Joe, you don't disrespect me, and I'm going to make that known. She's secretly hoping that he gets moved out of the office on medical issues, and then ultra PhD MAGA Jill, liberal MAGA Jill, gets to be acting president until someone can be found who is mentally capable to step in as acting president. She's going to be the real president. Oi, what a mess. Yeah, I know, it's bad. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. She literally carts him from room to room. V says, I told you should bring the spotlight line out when you start going into the comments. This way, we're all shining on them together. And you should pronounce GIF both ways every time you say it. I would highly appreciate the trolling. Enjoy our GIF GIFs, is what he says. Enjoy our GIF GIFs. Just see that really there? 2 interpretations, GIF GIFs. Yeah, I do, V. I do. Yeah, I do say it both ways, intentionally. The goal is to agitate as many people as possible on this topic. So yes, I will continue to do that. Don't even worry about it. All right, and so, yeah, the spotlight comment, we can get to, I'll have to figure out the spotlight thing. We'll have to get back to the spotlight. All right, we had a super chat come in, or actually a new member. Hey, we got a new member. Misty Thompson is going to be joining us on our morning walk and talks. Welcome, Misty. We're going to be grateful to have you. The morning walk and talks are fun. We talk politics, walk around the neighborhood. Join in on the comments, get to know everybody in the morning, say hello, get some vitamin D, some sunshine, some fresh air. It's a great way to start your morning. And we're doing a refresh over here, and we've got some more. Radice says, we are doing a GIF Friday today. When you get your new IKEA desk, you can make them a cake. The manager at our local IKEA is retiring, so I sent him a cake. Oh, I see what this is. That's what I sent our local IKEA manager a cake. You see what it is? It's ingredients. Some assembly required. He's going to have to do it himself. It's good to see you, Radice. Vientika says, adding on to what Rai-T said, was talking about, part of how to destroy a country is to destroy a language. That's part of what Mao did. You have the simplified Chinese now. Also, Rockefeller decided he was just going to change the spelling of a lot of words, and people just went along with it. And you've also seen me make these comments, but we have a lot of words that people just toss around, which really have a benign, neutral meaning that can be contextualized to mean whatever the hell you want. I was pointing this out earlier today to Hunter's crack dealer as a penance for him not having any stock in hand for me for scientific purposes. Any stock in hand. I don't want to know what those three dots are all about. But I agree with you, Vienticus. It is a problem. Language is extremely powerful, which is why I talk about emotive conjugations all the time here on this channel. I think it's important to observe it because it can commandeer and take over your thinking. The Veil says, the empty folders the FBI is going nuts about. I don't recall if there was a video showing the FBI what they did during the opening of the boxes. No, we haven't seen any videos. All we have are photos of the FBI claiming the classified folders were empty. What are the chances the FBI likes to frame people for, quote, incompetence, negligence, and other types of crimes? That the FBI emptied folders and they're selling classified papers on the dark web? I wouldn't put it past them. Well, you're not alone on that. I mean, many people, even senators, have joined in on that opinion. It's not like they will ever be held accountable. I mean, the agents will be making bank off this deal against Trump, so them being fired isn't like it's ever going to happen. The most that can happen next is Congress is going to defund the FBI, in which case the deep state FBI folks will retire in another country with hundreds of millions in their personal bank accounts. It sounds like a good movie there, The Veil. Maybe starring Jason Bourne. JC the Music Man, shout out to Jeremy. He says, simply put, the documents were far more secure at Trump's home than the DOJ. If they really believed the documents were sensitive or important, then they would not keep leaking things. It's true. If it was really consequential, then you imagine that we'd learn a little bit more than probably an itinerary from the visit to North Korea. Speech says, I think Jill Biden said that to Joe just to let everyone know who's really in charge. I think you're right about that, Speech. And I think a lot of other people are sort of joining in on that. It's that, alpha female maneuver. Trollmaster is here. He says, we all know talking about Nibiru and synthetic terrestrial DNA. Complicated topic there. I'm not sure what any of that really means, to be perfectly honest with you there, Trollmaster. Trollmaster, I don't know what that is. Yeah. Former LEO says, the Anarchist Cookbook is a good read about taking control. I read it many times in order to survive. Yeah, there was a great article the other day I was reading about, the billionaires who are planning to escape society when everything comes crashing down, and they all don't know how to do it because they're all trying to organize out of community. They're all trying to out-organize community. They don't want to build community. They want everybody to just follow orders. And the reality, the world doesn't work that way. So they're having a difficult time figuring that out. And that, my friends, I just did our final refresh for the day. I think we've got to everything. The amazing questions, super chats, comments all over the fruited plains. Let's see what else we have. Shout outs to my friends over on Rumble. Soul Wound says, Rob, put ferrite chokes on your cables. Yeah. I might have to do that. I think those are those big sort of, things that go on the end. I got to figure something out. I'm working on it. I'm going to keep tinkering around. Eric Scorpio, Soul Warrior Vibe, Anything is in the house. MASH24, all chatting away over on Rumble. Shout outs to John McGarvey saying, who gave a super chat over on Locals. C. Reed was here. Zach Nichols, John McGarvey's in the house. Bonnie Speck chatting away over on Locals, my friends. On YouTube, shout outs to Zulu. I saw Geomancy in the house earlier. Big shout outs to Lean. We've got Mindless Turtle. Eric Lindahl is here. Mr. T. Sarah Alderman. Leon Kingsley. Debbie Kupal. Shane Souza's in the house. Zulu's here, along with 01 First, VNT Kiss Prime, and others. And that, my friends, is it for the broadcast. Now, if you want to be a part of that amazing community, head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Grab our morning walk and talks. Share stories that you think are interesting. Connect with the amazing community. And one gigantic final shout out before we continue on to lean. We're going to stop right here, pause everything. Shout out to lean. Who is a mod over on YouTube, modding down the fort. If you want to join on YouTube, you can become a member by clicking that join button. It's right next to the subscribe button. If you have not already subscribed, I'd very much appreciate it if you did that. Love you. Also, if you're a member, you get GIFs and GIFs over on our YouTube member section. I am also a lawyer at the R&R Law Group, amazing law firm in Scottsdale, Arizona. We help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but also in their lives. And we appreciate your referrals. We help good people from all over the world who come out to Arizona and sometimes get in a little bit of trouble. It's very easy to do that here. Cops are everywhere and they're just generating revenue hand over fist by, charging people with crimes. And we help. We offer free case evaluations, 480-787-0394. And available also online, rrlawaz.com. Free case evaluations. Schedule an appointment. We'll send you a copy of my book. We'll send you anything that we can to help assist you in solving your problem. And we're grateful for your referrals. Shout outs to our mods who are modding down the fort. I also saw Henry Dixon in the house, and Henry Dixon's not on the list. Henry Dixon was swinging by, wrenching up the place for us as well. So shout outs to Vientikis, shout out to K-Bean, Just Cause, to Lean in the house, playing hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zulu's in the house along with Gio, Henry Dixon stopped by. Shout out to our Spotlight supporters, my friends, who are contributing to the programs monetarily a little bit more. And I'm grateful for the support. Big shout outs to Chris Romero, David B3. We've got Dr. EMB in the house, along with John over at qsimple.com. And John, check him out. Go over to qsimple.com. Check out his website. And if you want to be on this list, if you want to have a little screen real estate and support the work that we do here as well, head on over or send me an email. Sign up on the Spotlight supporter level on YouTube or over on Locals. And then send me an email. But that, my friends, is it for us for the day. I am thankful for all of the amazing questions, all of the comments, all of the participation, joviality, frivolity, fun. And I'm going to encourage you to get a very nice, restful sleep. Maybe do the 4-7-8 breathing, purge some of that anxiety, and rest peacefully in a beautiful slumber. Because we're going to be back here again to do it all tomorrow. And I look forward to seeing you there. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.